Hello and welcome back to the Winning Agenda. My name's Jesse Muirman-Marshall, here with a strategy primer on the first couple of days of Uprising spoilers. So thanks to those of you who tuned in to our exclusive spoiler, of Heatwave and Phoenix Flame. If you haven't watched the video, you can watch it on the channel. But what I'm going to do today is just go through most of the cards that we've seen from FaB and Dromai in the first couple of days. We haven't had the Icelander spoilers, the main ones yet, so we're looking forward to that. But what I want to give you today is, after looking at this first couple of days worth of spoilers, what seem to be the emerging themes in terms of strategy for both FaB and Dromai, and what are the main mechanics of the heroes, and what are some of the key cards, and what are some of the gaps that we're seeing so far, and some of the things that we might see over the rest of the spoiler season. Hopefully, the aim of today is that it will give you an opportunity to think about some of these themes, some of these strategies, and get brewing with your FaB and Dromai decks, as well as for those of you attending the callings and the world premieres at the end of the week, hopefully a bit of food for thought about what the sealed format might look like and how to analyze and evaluate some of the cards in your pool. So we'll start off with FaB, Rising Rebellion, our Draconic Ninja hero. And we'll start off with FaB's hero cards. So you may start the game with a Phoenix Flame in your graveyard. And as many of you will know, this was, of course, one of our preview cards, the Phoenix Flame itself. So we'll bring that up on the screen here so we can talk about it alongside. So it's a 0/0 Draconic action attack. It gets +1 if you control 2 or more Draconic Flame links. If you control 2 or more Draconic Chain links. The text above about being able to have 3 in an Uprising limited format, very relevant for sealed, but not so relevant for analyzing the constructed application. But just like any other card, you can have 3 of them in your deck. So you get to start with 1 of them in your graveyard, and as a once per turn instant, meaning you can do it on your opponent's turn and on your turn crucially, you can return a Phoenix Flame card from your graveyard to your hand, and it costs 1 less for each Draconic Chain link you control. And FaB's got 4 and 40, the usual stats. So you can do it on your opponent's turn, but it's going to require you to pay 3 most of the time because you're not going to control Draconic Chain links on your opponent's turn. However, on your turn, you can often get this down to a 0 cost, and we'll see what that means later on, but it's a pretty powerful thing to be able to do from turn 1, to be able to recur a Phoenix Flame. Some examples of what you can do with it, for example, so you've got some examples, for example, is we've got Rise from the Ashes here, which is a non-attack action. It says your next Draconic or Ninja attack action card you play this turn gains +3. You may return a Phoenix Flame from your graveyard to your hand. So not only with FaB's ability, but we'll see on this and a couple of other cards here, so we'll bring up another one, you get the opportunity to actually return these Phoenix Flames from your graveyard to your hand. So you can quickly see how if you perhaps start with a hand with a Phoenix Flame in it, just 1, and you've got your 1 in the graveyard that you started with, you could lead off with a Phoenix Flame or with another attack, one of the openers we'll come to in a minute, not doing a whole lot, but you could then build that chain very quickly. All of a sudden you can follow up with a Stoke the Flames. If it hits, you can return a Phoenix Flame from your graveyard to your hand and it gains go again. Or you could follow up just with a Rise from the Ashes, pumps your next attack, gets you back the Phoenix Flame that's in your graveyard, and then all of a sudden you're building up to 2, 3, 4 chain links. Obviously, Rise from the Ashes being a non-attack action breaks the chain, so perhaps that might actually be what you would begin with. But then things like Stoke the Flames can obviously be paid in the middle or later part of the combat chain to just build those chain links and threaten to recur the Phoenix Flame that started in your graveyard or one from a previous turn that's gone there. You've then got things like Inflame. So when you attack with Inflame, if you've played another red card this turn, of which Phoenix Flame is one, and most of these attacks in your deck are going to be, you may return a Phoenix Flame from your graveyard to your hand. So another one. This one, unlike Stoke the Flames, Inflame does it automatically whether it hits or not. So this is a 0/1 with go again. So Inflame is in fact one of the very good openers. So you attack with it, it guarantees to get you back a Phoenix Flame. It's a 0/1, which is not a great rate in terms of an attack, but you're getting this free Phoenix Flame attack, which not only is going to be a 0/1 itself, but it's going to help you build your Draconic Chain links, because the number of Draconic Chain links, as we'll see in a moment, is very, very important for FaB. So things like Phoenix Form are some of the ways that you can get payoffs, and I've got a whole section on the payoffs later in the video. So 0/4/3, not the greatest base stats for an attack, but it blocks for 3, which is kind of nice. And it says, if you control 1 or more Phoenix Flames, Phoenix Form has go again. If you control 2 or more, it has +2. So all of a sudden, if you've got 2 Phoenix Flames on your combat chain, which as we've seen between Inflame and FaB's ability, it's very easy. So even if you started the turn with no Phoenix Flames in your hand and you had 2 in the graveyard, you can lead off with Inflame, get 1 back, play the 1 you got back, and then you can go with FaB's ability and return 1 for 1 resource. Or if you got any other go again attack that's Draconic, you can play that as your 3rd chain link and then get back a Phoenix Flame for free with FaB. And then all of a sudden you've played 2 Phoenix Flames without even starting the turn with 1 in your hand. And then Phoenix Form will be a 0 for 5 go again at that point. The dream is if you can get to the point where later in the game you've got 2 in the graveyard and you start your turn with 1 in hand that you've drawn naturally, then you can lead off with things like Inflame, use FaB's ability, use the 1 you've drawn naturally from your hand, and then finish off with a Phoenix Form, being a 0 for 5 go again that's threatening to on hit draw 3 cards, which as we know is an extraordinarily powerful on hit trigger. I mean, that might be one of, if not the most powerful on hit trigger that we've seen so far in the game. It's going to be difficult to get to the point where you've got 3 Phoenix Forms on the combat chain. You're going to have to be in a position where you've got all of them out of your deck, even though you start with 1 in the combat zones, if you like, in your graveyard. But yeah, certainly a very, very powerful payoff. And in the interim, being a 0 for 5 go again once you've got 2 Phoenix Flames out and about is certainly nothing to sneeze at. So some of the chain openers, and the thing about these that makes them a little bit more versatile compared to the Katsu openers, things like Surging Strike, Head Jab, and what's the kick? It escaped me all of a sudden, but the kick opener is that these don't actually need to be played at the start of the chain, because all of your other chain links in FaB are not necessarily a leg tap. That's something else. Are not necessarily going to have combo and therefore required to be required to be played in a certain order. All of these openers, or all these attacks, I should say, because they're not necessarily openers, give you a benefit wherever you play them on the combat chain and don't necessarily need to be sequenced in a particular way. So I really like that about FaB's cards so far. So Rising Resentment, which we've got here, is a 0 for 3, blocks for 2. It says, when Rising Resentment hits, you may banish an attack action card from your hand with cost less than the number of Draconic chain links you control. If you do, it costs 1 less to play and you may play it this turn. So this on-hit trigger is kind of a weird one. It requires you, it can give you a discount. So even if this is your first chain link, you get to banish a 1 cost and it gets 1 less to play this turn. You can only, so whatever you banish gets a 1 resource point discount, but you can only banish something which has cost less than or equal to, less than the number of chain links you control. Okay, so 1 cost doesn't work actually off 1 chain link. So if you open up with this, you can only banish a 0 cost, which doesn't actually do a lot, but it's just a 0 for 3 go again. So really, perhaps a misnomer for me to name this as an opener. There you go, chalk that up to spoiler season. This is probably best as the 2nd or higher chain link. I thought it was less than equal, but it's actually less than. So it can be played as an opener. It still has go again. It's still a 0 for 3. Broadly equivalent to your Head Jab as an opener. But it's got this additional text that if you play it later, it gives you some additional benefit. And all the other openers' stats are actually the same as that. So they mirror the Head Jab, Leg Tap, Surging Strike stats. A 0 for 3, a 1 for 4, a 2 for 5. As we'll see, I bring them all up here. And they all block for 2. So they've got kind of the same base stats as those Katsu openers, but they've got this additional ability that if you play them later in the chain, they give you a really relevant effect on hit. So when Rising Resentment hits, you get to banish, you get a discount if the cost is less than the number of chain links. Mounting Anger, if it hits, you may banish attack action card from your hand with cost less than, again, not equal to, the number of Draconic chain links you control. If you do, it gains +1 and you may play it this turn. So Mounting Anger, perfectly fine as an opener because you can banish a 0 cost and give it +1 this turn. Engulfing Flame Wave, costing the most, probably the most powerful effect. It's a 2 for 5, just like Surging Strike. When it hits, reveal the top card of your deck. If it's an attack action card with cost less than the number of Draconic chain links you control, banish it. You may play it this turn. So this one's actually giving you card advantage. So Rising Resentment gives you a bit of a resource discount if it's later in the chain. Mounting Anger gives you a +1, potentially even from the first chain link, if you're banishing a 0 cost. Engulfing Flame Wave, again, can give you card advantage if you've got a 0 cost on top. But if you play it on a subsequent chain link, you become more and more certain to actually be banishing something that you can, or to be looking at something that you can banish with this ability and therefore gain basically a free card. So I think Rising Resentment, Mounting Anger, Engulfing Flame Wave, all really strong, all really interesting as ways to enable those wide combat chains. And also between Mounting Anger and Engulfing Flame Wave, I think really good ways to start off the combat chain with a bit of a punch and incentivize your opponent to block your early attacks to potentially follow up with some more powerful things later. So FaB's finishes, what are these powerful payoffs that you get for building a wide combat chain? Because we've seen a few tools there between the Phoenix Form recursion cards, and the other abilities for you to build a reasonably wide combat chain. Plus, of course, you can play Kodachis in FaB as well to get those 2 additional chain links. Although worth noting that the Kodachis aren't going to count as draconic chain links, so they're not necessarily going to fulfill some of the requirements here. So what do we get for it? So we've got Rupture is a new keyword ability that basically reads, if this is played as chain link 4 or higher, so if you've made 3 attacks before it, it gets an additional bonus. So Lava Burst is your base version. It's a 0 for 2 attack. It blocks for 3. Pretty good. If the block 3 is good. The 0 for 2 is not great. But if it's played as chain link 4 or higher, it has +3. So all of a sudden it's a 0 for 5. It doesn't have Go Again, natural Go Again. But so it is more in the vein of a combat chain finisher rather than something to play in the middle. But it's a good example of how you get these higher rate cards just for building a wider combat chain in FaB. In addition to Phoenix Form, of course, which we saw earlier, which is the payoff for having lots of Phoenix Flames on your combat chain. Lava Burst and some of these others just reward you for building a wide combat chain no matter what's on it. Rise Up is another great example. So again, a Rupture ability here. This is a Dromai or FaB specialization, but this one, as the art will tell you, compared to the other double specialization, is a bit more suited to FaB, it seems to me. So it's a 1 for 3 draconic attack. It has Rupture. If it's played as chain link 4 or higher, it has Dominate and +X, where X is twice the number of Phoenix Flames you control. So because FaB's got a bit more control over where the Phoenix Flames are, naturally, because the hero ability gives him the capacity to get one back, Rise Up can potentially be a 3 base power attack with Dominate, and plus, say you've played 2 Phoenix Flames as like a moderate case scenario, +4. So it becomes a 1 for 7 Dominate, which is a reasonably decent finisher. Like that's well above rate in terms of just being a 1 for 7. And also having Dominate means that you're increasingly likely to either demand equipment or to get some damage through on that turn. Red Hot, as I mentioned, is the other double specialization. It's a 2 cost, and its Rupture ability is, if it's played as chain link 4 or higher, it has, when you attack with this, reveal the top X cards of your deck, where X is the number of draconic chain links you control. So this one specifically refers to draconic chain links. Although the Rupture ability, again, will trigger if you've got 3 of any other before it. So one of them could be draconic and 2 Kodachis, but then the ability will be less powerful. So the more draconic chain links you have in your Rupture trigger, the more powerful the Rupture is actually going to be. So when you attack with it, reveal the top X cards. X is the number of draconic chain links you control. Deal damage equal to the number of red cards revealed this way to any target, then shuffle. So worth noting that this can be dealt to any target, so it can go to allies or to face, and it's damage, not arcane damage. So it's only really at this stage preventable by things like Quell, which is one of the abilities we'll come to on equipment, new equipment abilities in a moment. But it does make it, it's kind of damage with some extra evasion, like it can't be blocked with ordinary cards from hand. So definitely worth looking at this. If you can set this up with a Rupture, you're reasonably likely in a deck that's going to have a lot of reds in it. Say you've got 3 chain links before it, they're all draconic, to be hitting 1.5 to 2 on average, I'd say, with most of these decks. And 2 free damage on a 2 for 4 that's hard to prevent and has some evasion is certainly worth thinking about. And also can go to allies. That's very, very crucial in the looming metagame, I think. Liquefy. So this is another Rupture card. If it's played at chain link 4 or higher, it's an attack reaction this time, 1 cost. Target attack action card gains when this hits a hero, put a -1 counter on equipment they control, and then if it has 0 defense, destroy it. So this is extremely powerful. In the reaction phase, you're able to threaten, if you've got any attack at chain link 4 or higher, your opponent has to be thinking, are they going to liquefy one of my key equipment that I'm relying on over the course of a long game plan? So it just makes, as soon as you build any kind of chain link, as soon as you take a turn where you're trying to pivot, just the threat of liquefy is going to be really big at incentivizing your opponent to block, think carefully about holding defense reactions and keeping them available. Otherwise, they're at risk of losing their key equipment. So liquefy, I really like just the threat of it, but the effect itself as well could be a really powerful way to really turn the tempo on a pivot turn. Speaking of tempo, we've got Take the Tempo, which is another majestic, another great way to extend the turn, or to reward you for a wide combat chain, not so much extend the turn, because it doesn't have go again naturally. But it says it's a 1 for 5 that says when Take the Tempo hits, if you've hit 3 or more times this combat chain, banish the top card of your deck. If it's an attack action card, you may play it until the end of your next turn. So this is another way to gain card advantage on the following turn off the top of the deck. Your deck is really likely to have a lot of attack action cards, a high density of them in FaB, and hitting 3 or more times in a combat chain doesn't seem like it's going to be too hard to do. This also blocks for 3, which is nice, and setting up a bigger turn the following turn is a great way to pay yourself off for your opponent choosing to keep cards in hand. It hedges a little bit if they just say, I'm going to take whatever 5 throws at me this turn because I've got a great hand and I'm going to come back with it. This says, well, your cost for doing that is you're giving me another free card next turn, most likely. So I certainly like this as an option, and I think it's going to be pretty powerful in FaB. So other than the ways to build your wide combat chain, some of the payoffs at the end of the chain, you've also got the options, of course, to pump up your chain along the way and have big turns with FaB, which is nice. It's good to have lots of different options and ways to attack. So Uprising is a Draconic Majestic, playable in FaB or Dromai, and it says your next 4 Draconic attacks this turn gain +1, go again. So obviously if you are planning on one of those 2 or 3 Phoenix Flame turns, this can turn your Phoenix Flames from 0 for 0s, plus their natural ability 0 for 1, plus this 0 for 2, and if you've got a Heat Wave as well, you can be looking at 0 for 3s. So if each of your each of your Phoenix Flames is suddenly a 0 for 3, you can imagine building a pretty significant amount of damage on the combat chain, and then you've got Spreading Flames as well. It's a 1 for 3, and it says Draconic attacks you control have +1, while their base strength is less than the number of Draconic chain links you control. So this is a fantastic opener. This is like the signature FaB opener that is just going to cause so much damage on those big turns where you're planning on recurring 2 Phoenix Flames, or perhaps going for the 3 Phoenix Flames in the Phoenix form. Spreading Flames just starts that turn off beautifully. It means that basically every single one of your attacks, because of their relatively low base strength, especially Phoenix Flames having 0, is going to be at least at a +1. And even if we look at Phoenix form, which is 0 for 3 as a base, it's probably going to be played chain link 4 or higher, so even it's probably going to get the +1 from this. So Spreading Flames to me seems like one of the linchpins in this strategy, just being able to it's potentially a 1 for 3, go again, that's giving you, +3 or +4 extra damage over the course of the turn. So this can easily, in effect, be a 1 for 7, plus it's pumping on separate instances, and it's leading to things like Phoenix form, which have powerful on-hit abilities, also getting the benefit of the +1. So it's even better than just being a 1 for 6 or 1 for 7. So Spreading Flames, I think you're going to be seeing a lot at top tables in tournaments. Some of the chain extenders, so ways that FaB can get additional chain links from fewer cards. Obviously, you've got FaB's natural hero ability to recur Phoenix Flames, but we've got Tome of the Firebrand, which says, or Tome of Firebrand, which is a 1-cost instant, so it's not going to break the combat chain. And it says, play Tome of Firebrand only if you control 4 or more Draconic chain links. Draw 2 cards. So it's effectively a Rupture card, if you like, but it can't be the 4th one, so it's got to be after the 4th one. And on that big turn, play it off a Tunic and 2 extra cards is just, I can see the potential. You can feel how these turns can just get huge and out of hand if you sculpt them correctly and if you find the right space to do them in the game. Obviously, we're going to be moving into a metagame where we've got Icelander with not only Channel Lake Frigid, but also Channel the Bleak Expanse. So there's going to be a lot of control options. There's going to be that control aspect to the metagame. But I like that we're pushing the aggro side of the metagame, particularly the ninja death by 1,000 cuts style, into a bit more of a, I mean, I know Katsu had the keyword combo, but this is even more of kind of a combo space where you can assemble really large things, but perhaps the floor on some of your cards is a little lower. So I really enjoy that. Double Strike is a 0 for 1. As its chain link resolves, whether or not it hit, you banish it, and you can play it this combat chain. If you do, it loses this ability. So it only blocks for 2, but still, it's a 0 for 1, and then it's a 0 for 1 again, guaranteed. It's not a draconic card, worth realizing that. But, you know, obviously it enables Mask and Momentum. It's still annoying. It still helps you build towards your Rupture cards. And I think Double Strike is another Majestic that's going to be seeing a lot of play. So that brings us to the end of the FaB section. Dromai is, of course, the other hero that we've seen a few cards for. And Dromai, like Prism, the first Illusionist hero, is trying to build a board, even more so than Prism, who had all these heralds at common. Dromai is even more focused on building a board that's more diverse. So it's not Spectra illusions that we're seeing this time, but it's a range of other allies who are going to be built on Ash. So what is Ash and what does Dromai do? So whenever you pitch a red card, you create an Ash token. A red card obviously is a card with the red color strip. If you've played a red card this turn, dragons you control have go again while attacking. So, ooh, dragons. Ash, the material that Dromai creates, it's a draconic illusionist token, and it says while Ash is under an object, that object has phantasm. So it's a token, Dromai creates it, it sits on the board, and it's got whatever's on top of it has phantasm. So how do you put things on top of it? Well, through Dromai's Ash artistry, of course. So you've got Storm of Sandakai, which is the common weapon. It says dragon allies you control have once per turn action 0 attack. It's got the reminder text, allies can be attacked, can't be defended by the controlling hero. They die when they have 0. At the end of turn, their life totals are reset. So Storm of Sandakai, in combination with Dromai's ability, gives your dragons the ability to attack, and Dromai, of course, gave dragons go again whilst you've played a red card this turn. Crucial that it's played, not pitched, like Luminaris. So Storm of Sandakai giving dragons the ability to attack. Either Ashwing is an example of the dragons. This is the least powerful version. It's like the base version. And then we'll see how these are created and then how the larger dragons are created on top of that Ash. So either Ashwing is a 1 strength attack, and it's got 1 defense or 1 health, and it's got Arcane Barrier 1, interestingly. So how do you summon either Ashwings? Well, with cards like Rake the Embers. So this is a 1 cost Draconic Illusionist action. It says create an Ash token, then transform up to 3 Ash you control into either Ashwings. So if you've pitched a red to play this, then you play this, you get the red, so you get the Ash from Dromai's ability, you get the Ash from this. So if you already had 1 Ash in play from a previous turn, you get to create 3 either Ashwings, all of which can attack. Because you've played a red card this turn, all your dragons have go again. Either Ashwings or dragons. Storm of Sandakai gives it the ability to attack, so you can attack them 3 times for 1. That's like the base level. So you're building off 1 Ash at the start of the turn, pitching any red card, and all of a sudden from just this Rake the Embers and your red pitch, you've created another Ash, created a 3rd Ash, created 3 either Ashwings, and swung for 3. So that's a really basic thing that Dromai can do. Skittering Sands is another example. So this transforms an Ash you control into an either Ashwing and gives it +3 till end of turn. So this is effectively, I suppose, a 0 for 4, go again, which is pretty strong. Because of course, by playing the Skittering Sands, you're getting go again that turn to your dragons. So your either Ashwing that you create will have go again, and it'll be able to attack from by your Storm of Sandakai's ability, attack for 0. And it'll gain +3. So the either Ashwing on the turn you play the Skittering Sands is effectively paying 0. You're attacking for 4, and then you get this either Ashwing that hangs around. So that seems super strong to me. I mean, 0 for 4 go again is already a decent rate. And this gives you a 0 for 4 go again that can then attack again the following turn and actually builds your board. We've then got Billowing Mirage, which is a 1 for 3. When you attack with it, this is actually an attack action, not a non-attack action. When you attack with it, you can transform up to 1 Ash you control into an either Ashwing, go again. So much like the card before, Skittering Sands, this instead is a 1 for 3, an actual separate attack itself, but again creates an either Ashwing. So still, the rate on this, even though it does cost 1, is pretty strong. And in fact, sometimes if you're on an empty board, being able to pitch to play this, it allows you to create that Ash using Dromai's ability, which could be nice. Not that costing more is necessarily good. In most cases, it's terrible, but having something to pitch that red for can be nice. So the dragons. Oh, Asvalai, that shouldn't be there yet. Anyway, Kyloria. So Kyloria is a 4 strength, 2 defense dragon. And actually, Invoke Asvalai is a good example to have sitting there because all of these dragons have an invoke card, which they need to be played to summon. So much like those non-attack actions and the attack action that create your either Ashwings, each of these dragons has a specific card with invoke and then their name. They all cost a different amount of resources to play, but they all summon the dragon. So you basically flip them over, put them on an Ash, and they are that dragon. So Kyloria says whenever Kyloria hits a hero, gain control of an item they control. If you don't gain control of an item this way, draw a card. That's really strong. Super hoses dash, but just in general, whenever it hits, draw a card is super powerful. I mean, we've seen that on-hit draw effects are extremely strong before with things like Snatch, but this is effectively a Snatch with Go Again, right? They can obviously attack it, but if they don't kill it, then you get to go again with it the following turn. So Kyloria seems really, really strong to me. It does cost 1 to summon, plus obviously the cost of having an Ash in play in the first place, but yeah, a repeatable Snatch with the potential upside that you can completely hose them if they happen to be playing Dash seems really, really good. So Uvia is the next one. At the start of your turn or when Uvia enters the arena, transform up to 1 Ash you control into an either Ashwing. So this is only 1 power attack, but Uvia is sort of, as you can see from the artwork, a bit of a nest parent. So when at the start of your turn or when Uvia enters the arena, you get to transform an Ash into an either Ashwing. So this is not so much about attacking as it is about widening your board and creating a really strong board state. Obviously with 6 defense, it's pretty hard for them to deal with, and you do, as an enters the arena effect, get at least 1 either Ashwing out of it. And Uvia costs 2 to summon. We've then got Asvalai, which I've unfortunately covered up with the invoke, so we can't see that. But we'll move on. Oh dear. I've covered up Dracona Optimi as well. Anyway, we'll come back to that in a minute, but the damage is the next element that I wanted to cover. So I mentioned Red Hot earlier, which is a Dromai or Fire specialization, but you can imagine now that we've seen all of the opportunities that we have through Uvia and through all this summon cards that create multiple either Ashwings, how we can potentially end up with a lot of chain links on our turn. And Red Hot is just such a strong payoff for Dromai to be able to threaten heaps of damage. So whilst Dromai has the capacity to generate heaps of board presence through the Ash that she creates and then the dragons that she summons, she's also got access to all of these draconic cards that give her Rupture and also extreme payoffs, I guess, from Rupture and other effects. So Red Hot says, if it's played as Chainlink 4 or higher, it has when you attack with this, reveal the top X cards of your deck, where X is the number of draconic chainlinks you control, deal damage equal to the number of red cards revealed this way to any target, then shuffle. So with most of the summon cards, if not all I believe, being red, and so many of the cards that you will want to play in this deck being red, since Dromai's ability rewards you for pitching the reds, Red Hot is probably going to have a pretty high density of hits in your deck, and the dragons, if we scroll back to the either Ashwings, are draconic illusionist tokens, meaning that it's pretty easy to get multiple draconic chain links, in addition to the fact that Dromai can also play Phoenix Flames to get access to additional draconic chain links as well. So I can see, whilst Fire will have the capacity to build a lot of draconic chain links with the cards, the attack action cards that he's playing, Dromai will have the capacity potentially to even build more. I think the ceiling on Dromai is going to be higher because of the way she builds board presence with the either Ashwings, and so I can potentially see Red Hot hitting for a significant amount of damage. Because if you can get this up to like 8 and you hit 6 or 7, the return on it is absurd. Like 2 for 4 plus 6, 2 for 10, if you manage to hit that many, it is nuts. So you basically, because of Red Hot and the threat of that, can't allow Dromai to accumulate many Either Ashwings, and you just have to deal with them. So decks that can't deal with a lot of Either Ashwings, like she can easily produce 3, 4, 5 on one turn. Decks that can't go wide and deal with that are going to be in a lot of trouble from red hot potentially. And without other tools to, channel like Frigid and prevent the Ashwings from attacking or what have you, they're going to have potentially a lot of damage to contend with. Lava Burst is, of course, another one of the Rupture cards we talked about earlier, and again, just is going to be an efficient card for Dromai to be able to have in the deck as red, and also play once there is a bit of board presence there to threaten some more significant damage after the Either Ashwings have come in. Burn Them All we'll come back to later, and Dracona Optimi we spoiled earlier. Vin Sarakai is, I've covered that up, but if Vin Sarakai hits a hero, he deals 3 damage to them, I believe, and it's a 6 strength and 1 defense hero. So this is one that you'll play definitely not when your opponent has the capacity to deal damage to you in your turn with things like if you're playing against a wizard or whatever, but sideboarding this in potentially against other decks that are more defensive and don't have the capacity to deal damage on your turn, or even in the aggro mirror, could potentially be really good. And it's 3 to summon or to invoke for Vin Sarakai. So some of the control elements that Dromai has, I want to talk about quickly. So Sandcover is a 0 cost instant, and it turns an Ash you control into something that has Ward 4, which says if your hero would be dealt damage, prevent 4 of that damage and destroy this. So this is kind of like a 0 for 4 defense reaction, but you can play it as an instant, and it can prevent arcane damage, it can prevent non-combat damage. It just seems like a really, really versatile, powerful card. It does take up one of your Ash, which is of course the basis of all of your attacks and all of your creatures and all your dragons. But it is a resource that you can generate relatively easily with Dromai's ability, and is a pretty small cost to get what I think is a pretty powerful prevention ability and a pretty powerful defensive and control ability to prevent key sources of damage. Dominia, obviously Sandcover works really well against Dominate and such things as well. Dominia, whenever Dominia attacks a hero, reveal the top card of your deck. If it's a red card, look at their hand and banish a card from it. So again, you're going to have a high density of reds in your Dromai deck, and being able to invoke Dominia for 4 and then attack is very much a control ability. It's kind of an aggro control ability, I guess. It forces your opponent to block. Not force your opponent to block. Force your opponent to lose a card, and if they don't block, then they're also taking damage. So I can just see this being really, really strong. We saw on a card like Pry that the capacity to take a card from your opponent's hand is valued very highly. It's something we haven't seen a lot of, and Pry, of course, takes a card and then they get to redraw another one. Dominia, all you have to do is have a red card on top of your deck, which you're going to have a lot of the time in a Dromai deck, and you actually get to deprive them of a card in their hand, which is really just something that we haven't seen much in FaB before. And against decks that are trying to either play expensive things, go really wide with cards in their hand, or just otherwise have sort of a combo-oriented hand where that 4th card just makes the hand so much better, which is pretty common in FaB, right? Like the game's structured so that a 1 and 2 card hand for most heroes is not a quarter or half as good as a 4 card hand. The more cards you have, the increase in power of your hand is not linear. So a card like Dominia taking that 4th card out of their hand, or if they've already blocked with 1 card, taking that 3rd card, has actually an outsized effect compared to just a quarter of their hand. So I really like Dominia. I think it's going to be super powerful in the more control style Dromai builds, but also just in a tempo race, taking that 4th card, not giving them that choice, not having to hit, is just super, super powerful. Obviously, I should mention that all these dragons have Phantasm, right? So if Dominia is popped and if Dominia still does have Phantasm, you don't have a passing Mirage out, and it is popped, then of course the attack doesn't resolve, so you don't get that on-attack ability. So when I say that they don't have a choice to take it, obviously if they have a Phantasm popper, that'll help, but otherwise they're in big trouble. Nourishing Emptiness is something else I wanted to mention. This is a very interesting card that has seen some niche play in Kano and Dorinthia, 2 decks that don't tend to play a lot of other attack actions. But I just wanted to note that Dromai does have access to Burn Away and Burn Them All, which are both ways that she can remove the attack action cards that she's playing from the graveyard. which could potentially lead to Nourishing Emptiness seeing a bit more play. Even if you had just Phoenix Flames and 3 Nourishing Emptiness in your deck, if you're playing both Burn Away and Burn Them All, your Burn Away is going to get rid of your Phoenix Flames from your graveyard. Your Burn Them All can potentially get rid of your Nourishing Emptinesses that are already in there. Because at the beginning of your end phase, you put a raise counter on it and destroy it unless you banish a red card from your graveyard for each raise counter on it. So that obviously allows you to get rid of the existing Nourishing Emptiness and Phoenix Flames or any other attack actions that you're playing. And I can certainly see a deck that is able to utilize those things to then get a bit of extra power out of Nourishing Emptiness and make sure it's online most of the time, even when you're playing multiple copies. So that's just not something that has been super easy to do in a profitable way. I think Burn Away and Burn Them All are both cards that you would consider playing, definitely, in Dromai. Burn Away perhaps a little bit less so in Constructed, but Burn Them All definitely seems like it's going to be a powerful tool in some matchups, particularly in the mirror. And I could see, if it turns out that having something like Nourishing Emptiness in your deck is worthwhile, then I could see this little combo being one that slides in every now and then. Might be really tier B, but or tier 2, but I just wanted to sort of call it out anyway. The last card that we've seen spoiled that I wanted to quickly mention, and shout out to Arsenal Pass who spoiled this, was Crown of Providence, which says when you defend with Crown of Providence, you may put a card from your hand or arsenal on the bottom of your deck. If you do, draw a card, and it's got Blade Break and Defense 2, but crucially, it's a generic head equipment. So this is our new Skullcap. It's our Skullcap replacement. It's got a very different ability, but it's just really nice to have a new generic piece to potentially slot in instead of the Skullcap. It's got a max of 2 rather than a max of 3 block, so perhaps a little bit less powerful than Skullcap there. But in most matchups, the ability to filter your hand on a key turn or filter your arsenal into a card in hand could be extremely, extremely strong, particularly in some decks. So nice to see this one, and really excited for the spoiler season so far. So thanks for watching. I've been Jesse Muirman Marshall for The Winning Agenda, and we'll be back hopefully with some Icelander spoilers, maybe some generics. Who knows what LSS is going to throw at us before the release. And for those of you in Australia who are coming to Sydney, I will see you at the Uprising Sydney premiere on Friday. And for those of you going to Las Vegas or Madrid, enjoy yourselves. Thanks very much. I've been Jesse Marshall for The Winning Agenda, and I'll see you next time.